Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Inclusion Monthly webinar. I am Lisette Levy, and we invited the two groups. We invited the inclusion specialist along with screening specialist. In some of your ELCs, you are the same person. And this time, I'm going to tell you to please, if you have any questions or you want to make a comment, if you don't mind raising your hand on the right hand panel, I would unmute you so you can express yourself freely. We are going to be covering one of very important topics today, and we have in the room Chelsea Markarian. Sorry about that. And our Erin Smeltzer, and she agreed to come and present for us this intricate process. So, any questions, any comments, raise your hand, and I will unmute you so you can talk. If you have questions, you can also use the question box. I rather that so the questions are recorded if you don't want to speak. And on the main page, you're going to see right now that I posted there two questions, and those were like reminders of the kind of doubts that you have, but these will be answered through our presentation. So, with nothing else, I'm going to let Erin to have the floor.
Awesome. Good afternoon. I hope everyone is staying above water with all of the things that are happening right now. As Lisette said, we just really wanted to spend some time with you and get your feedback on a process that we're mapping out here in the office. And the overall goal for what we want to do is to take a look at how we can do screening in a really automated way and be able to try really hard to make it so that you have, one, less findings, two, know what's happening, three, make it really easy to get done and to move the screening requirements around. But also, one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten a lot from the screening tool creators and from just research in general is that we need to make sure families have access to the screener because families are who the screener is intended for. So we were trying to find a sweet spot in between all of that. So we're going to walk through that process really quickly. And hang on just a second. We're going to try to get our questions set up so that Lisette can watch questions. And again, if you need to ask a question, you can raise your hand and she'll keep an eye on that for us. And we can unmute you and feel free to talk as much as you want. So give us just
and if somebody could just write yes if you can hear us, we also appreciate it. To know, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Okay, let me do this really quick. All right. Thank you so much. Questions?
Okay.
Okay. So, as I said, one of the things we're trying to do is find that sweet spot between the parent having access to the screener, but also you having the ability to ask providers to do the screening and get as much information as you want. So, as we roll through this, just know questions are welcome and we will try our best to predict what we think will happen. So, an overarching timeline, just really quickly. I know these sometimes are hard to see on a big screen, but as you can see, let me go back to it. Screening is on a tight run. We've got to have this all knocked out and completed by July 1st to be able to meet statutory requirements. So we have a child assessment system we're developing as well as a screening system. And so our goal is to have this all knocked out by July 1. So the overarching idea here is that when a parent goes in to do enrollment, so not at the point where they're getting on the waiting list, but the point that they're actually enrolling in the SR program, what's going to happen is at the very end of signing their COE, they're going to come up to a page that says it's time to screen or click here to screen. It'll make it feel like it's part of the process. And we have had some feedback about moving it around in the process, so we are open to hearing that. Technically, just at this moment, it's just slated to be at the end of the enrollment process, but we are considering moving that around. When they get to the end of the COE, it'll pop up a page saying now it's time to screen. They'll have 3 options. They can click on the screening and do it. They can ask for help with the screening, or they can decline the screening. So I'm going to walk through what's going to happen so that you can see technically what the idea is right now. So if they click on the screening, what's going to happen is that we are going to have we're creating an API right now with Enterprise. I know right now some people use different systems. We as a state are going to purchase Enterprise and Family Access for every coalition in the state. What's going to happen is when the parent clicks on the link, if they do that, a webhook will happen where through an API, all of the demographic information that's needed will go over to the Family Access portal. It will pre-populate that demographic page and also assign a unique identifier. We have worked with Brooks. We are all okay to do this and move into development. We just want to get your feedback before we move this route. So it will send all that demographic information over with the unique identifier. So when the parent clicks the link from EFS Mod, it will take them directly into the screening. They will complete the screening, and then at the very end of it, we'll have a pop-up page that tells them next steps. Thank you for completing enrollment. Go back to the family portal if you want more information, whatever. We haven't really completely designed that page, but it will basically let them know the enrollment process is done. So that is if they click the link. Now that data will live in your Family Access portal. You can move it around as much as you want, but what's going to happen after they get that thank you page is automatically that screening data is going to shoot over to our family portal and be displayed to the family. So for those of you who are finding experts on screening, I hope you can see how that would alleviate a lot of your woes when it comes to some of the requirements of the rule. So that's one option. The second option is if they ask for help. If they ask for help on the screening, it will go into the queue of whoever is in the contract. So that link to do that screening will go into the provider queue. If it's the provider, notify them via email and let them know you have a screening that you need to do. If it's you, it goes to your queue and says, there is a screening that you need to do. Now, we know that this needs to be done in collaboration with the families, but we are obviously hoping that that will be done through connection with them by the responsible party. So then after it goes to the right person, as soon as that link is clicked on, they go through that exact same process that I mentioned earlier. Now, the third option is if they decline it. Now, if they decline it, we are going to create a pop-up box that asks them why. So this may be that they have a current IFSP or a current IEP. It may be that they have a screening that's already done. It may be that they just don't want to do screening, but we want to have some rationale so that you know what happened when they hit decline. We're going to try to make that decline button not so obvious because we really want parent screening, but we obviously don't want to overscreen parents, or overscreen children and parents feel exhausted from the process. So that is option 3. So all of these options lead back to the family portal showing that data to the family. It also leads to the fact that you will still have access to that family access portal. All that data will be accessible in there, and you can move it around and shift it around as you need. However, if the child moves coalitions, that data will be archived in EFS Mod, so you'll be able to see the history of the child still, even if they move coalitions. So one of the things we're creating is a screening roster, and now this is not final, and it is not everything that we want on there. I need to update this, but it's more for viewing purposes. I lacked creativity that day, so I apologize for the names, not being super creative. But it will give you due dates for screening that need to be done, tell you if a parent deferred or declined it, because that's really all you need to see in here. You can also see which screenings have been done, but we want the word Q to be relevant to what you need to know about. It'll show you if they deferred it. It'll show you any individualized supports, what's been done, when things are due, comments. We're hoping to have some other options that you can click on to be able to get more information about things that have been done, some case notes. And so eventually we want to get down the road, and I'll show you these at a later date, but we have some technical assistance pages that we want to build that are able for you to really see the history of the child. Because at the end of this, what we hope to see is if a child has moved coalitions and you can pull up the file and see that they've already offered that family a type of support, you won't have to offer it again. You know that maybe that's not what's best for that family, or maybe that's not what's best for the provider that's serving them because they've already been offered other strategies. So we really want to have a page for you that can follow this. And I can go ahead and show you. This is just still in the dream, but something that you can look at that will show you history codes, how many times they've been expelled, what kinds of supports have been offered to the children, the family, and the provider from a technical assistance side of the world. And so this is our dream, is to get here, but I want to show you the process and get back to where we were so you can see how we want to get there. So one more time, just walking through this because I know it's a lot really quickly. The goal is that during the enrollment process, the parent will be given the 3 options. One option leads the parent into doing the screening. One option leads it into whoever the party is in the contract to be screened. And one option leads them to declining. And if you would like to follow up, we would hope you would, to find out why the screening was declined. But it also can let you know if there's more data that's already been captured about that child. So at the end of all of those options, though, maybe not the declining option if the follow-up isn't successful, but the hope is that at the end, all of the data will be in the family portal, ready to view, and we can pull statewide reports and be able to really get information about our kids, and then also get parents to a place where they have the resources they need to advocate for their kids, or for their children. So I'm going to pause. That was a lot really quickly.
There's some questions.
And address questions.
Okay, I'm going to unmute Amanda.
Okay, so Amanda's question was, will all ASQ questions be required to be answered? Bumping. Okay, be answered before completion. So Amanda, what we're working on with Brooks is that they will, that they're going to do some quality assurance on their side to make sure that the screening is completed before a parent X's out or hits the X button or tries to get out of it. The other issue that we're working through is, what if a parent clicks out of the browser and we don't have time for a pop-up? So we're asking, what we're working with them right now on is because if they click the screening again, it'll have that unique identifier going over there to them, is can they restart where they are, or can they make sure that they can basically pick up where they left off, or will they have to start all the way over? We're also working on some notifications for you that if a screening isn't completed, that Brooks would notify your queue to let you know in ESS, because we'll have the API built back and forth. And so the other question we're asking is, can you let us know if something wasn't completed so that we can do the follow-up on our side to make sure it's done? So we are trying to do some quality assurance on the enterprise side of the world, but just in case, we will have notifications as backup to let us know if it doesn't work. Did that answer your question fully, or did you have any follow-ups, Amanda?
You are unmuted, Amanda.
Okay. Amanda, if you do get unmuted, just let us know, and please feel free to
no mic. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So Kathy, do we need to move it from the Family Access page to the Providers page? So how you navigate Enterprise and Family Access will be completely up to you. What's going to happen in EFS Mod is you will have the ability to send links to providers to do a screening if you feel like it's helpful. But if the parent declines this or defers the screening, basically says, I need help with the screening, you'll be able to, the system will automatically send that to the provider's queue if the provider is who is in the contract as the responsible party. So there's 2 different situations happening here. One where the parent just needs help and it automatically defaults to the provider, and then the timer gets set for them to complete the screener based off of rule. But then the other thing is if the parent does the screening, and we heard from some coalitions that it's really important to get the provider's perspective too. So what we're asking in EFS, and we've confirmed that we can do this, is that there will always be a chance for you to go ahead and put a screening link in the provider's queue so that they can do one as well. And so we'll keep all historical data of screening, so you'll be able to see all of it in the child's file.
And Kathy, you're muted, just in case you have follow-up questions.
Yeah, because in Sarasota, we have all of our providers have their own ASQ online logins, and they do their own. So that's why I thought if one came into the Family Access, if we had the ability to then transfer it directly to the provider's portal,
so,
to their ASQ page.
So what will happen is underneath everybody's enterprise and family access, there'll be one program that all the screening data goes into, and then you can move that data once it's completed to the correct program. So in the meantime, if the parent says, I need help, the link will go to the provider's queue in EFS Mod, and then when they click on it, that screening data will go into that one program, and then if you want to, you can move it into whichever provider or program you want to from that main program file.
Okay, because that was my other question. If they defer and it goes to the program, is the program going to do the screenings? Because we have the programs doing the screenings in Sarasota.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will go to the program's queue in EFS Mod. So yes, and then the only thing you'll have to do is, I don't know if you'll want to or if you'll need to at that point, because we'll have kind of handled it in EFS Mod, but if you want for some reason to take that screening data and move it around in Family Access and in Enterprise, you will have that capability. But just know that that data comes right back to EFS Mod, so we'll have it ready for parents to see immediately. So you may not need to do all the moving around, but you will have the capability to do that.
Okay, and my last question was, who puts the notes in the system on that page you showed us? Is that the provider or is that the ELC inclusion person? Yes.
Yeah, the notes will be the ELC's view. And as I said, that technical assistance page is not ready, and it probably won't be for a little bit because we've got to get all of this built first. But the screening roster page will be your view, so you'll be able to see that. But then the provider will also have a work queue as well. That's part of the EFS Mod system, so they'll be able to have that available to see what's up and what's due right now as well. So that technical assistance page will be for you to be able to see history and be able to see what has been done and be able to track what interventions you're offering or what individualized supports you're offering.
Okay, super. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. Thanks. All right, I think I have another one.
Katie Davis.
Okay, let me pull that down. Does clicking the initial decline mean all screenings would decline in the future? So we have a couple of things that are happening in the system, Katie. This is a really good question. So when they do their terms and conditions, they will have the opportunity to give an approval for screening and child assessment. Now, if they decline doing the screening, it doesn't necessarily mean they decline screening for their child. If you have a permission, if on the terms and conditions they say yes to screening, I would do the follow-up and say you declined screening, but is it that you just want someone else to do it, or is that something that you really just don't want to happen, and maybe get some clarity? I know that that may take extra time, so we're not going to give findings or anything like that if for some reason a parent declines screening and you don't follow up, but we know most of you will follow up, and so we wanted to make sure you had the information you needed to do that. So if they decline the screening, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't screen the child. It just means you may need to have some follow-up. Now, if they decline the screening in the very beginning, we'll still let you know that they do that, but we're working through whether or not we'll offer the screening page if they decline screening through the terms and conditions. So that's still kind of up in the air, and would love feedback on that. So, Katie, did I answer that? Do you have any follow-ups?
You have been unmuted, Katie. Maybe she's on the microphone.
Okay. Katie, if you get unmuted and you want to chat or have follow-up, just interrupt me.
Yes, thank you, she said.
Okay, perfect. All right, Nancy, is each ELC a provider? So when I say provider, what that means, when I'm saying it would be a school readiness provider. So in Enterprise, you will have one program, and that program will be where we send all the data to and we'll receive it from. You can then take it and move it to other programs within the Enterprise system, depending on how you want to set it up. We're not going to interfere with how you do that normal business. But in the programs in Enterprise, all of our data will come into one inside of your Family Access portal in the Brooks Enterprise system. Now, in EFS, when I say provider, that if the screening link gets queued to the provider's queue because the parent asked for help, that's the school readiness provider. The other queue would be the ELC queue. So if a parent says, I need help with screening, it's going to go to whoever's in the contract as the responsible party, either the SR provider's queue or the coalition's queue. Nancy, did I answer that okay?
You have been unmuted, Nancy.
Yes, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Do you
you.
have any more questions?
No, thank you.
All righty.
Awesome. Thanks, Nancy. All right, Beth, when the family clicks to defer and the link is sent to the provider, will there be a notification sent to the coalition staff for tracking and follow-up? We actually need to write that down as a thing to notify you. It will go to your queue. So if you remember on the page where the screening roster was, oops, let me move this over. On the screening roster, you can see that it has decline, defer, all of that. So you have a roster of everyone, even if it didn't defer to you. So that will be there, and so you'll know. But we hadn't thought about a notification to you that was added. If that's something you'd want, probably what we would think about is if you would rather have that daily or if you would like that batched weekly so you're not getting so many emails for our larger coalition. So if you have feedback on that, we'd like to hear it. So Beth, did I answer that? Do you have any follow-up?
You've been unmuted.
Yes, it's answered, but I think I'm with you on the notification, because when you've got 8,000 ASQs in total, being able to see which ones are new and the ones that you need to track, if they've been sent to the provider, we know that the provider doesn't always do them in the right time frame and may need follow-up and reminders or something sent saying, hey, don't forget you've got to get this done within the first 45 days. So I think, you know, even if it's weekly, then we have to be careful with those due dates and when we follow up with the provider.
Okay, that's good feedback. We'll take a look at maybe if there are some automated ways that the system can send notifications as well, and then that way you can keep an inventory of, or you can know when that's happening in case you need to do some follow-up. But we'll take a look and see what options are there, but I don't think that that's an issue if we need a notification there coming to both of you. And obviously, like I said, it will be in your queue for sure. So, and we'll try to see if we can prioritize the queue based off of the urgency of the due date. So that's our intent at this point. So thank you. That's a good question. Did you have any other follow-up?
I have another question that's waiting in there. I guess we can wait for it to come around.
Okay, sounds
like
good.
We can ask it now.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Or would you like me to just ask it now?
Yeah, go ahead. Just go ahead.
If a child scores with concerns, will a notification be sent to us as coalition staff so that we can then review it and evaluate it and potentially do individualized supports for the family?
Yes, Brooks actually did tell us a couple of the indicators that are going to come back when they transfer the data back is to let us know if something did show up as a concern so that your queue is they send a ping to your queue. So EFS, the API they'll add that indicator in if there was a concern so that we'll be able to notify you. And you'll also get a notification of when it's complete. It may not be an email, but it would be a notification inside of the system.
Okay, great.
That's a great question too. Okay. If they defer, this is Kathy again, if they defer, does the provider do the screening? I think we answered that earlier when we were chatting. Rachel, will the reporting information tie into warm line numbers and annual inclusion reporting? So the reason that we are excited about pulling it into EFS is because we are able to do a lot of different reporting out of EFS, and we have Tableau and we have other things that we can pull data out of. So at this point, we don't have the reports designed yet, but I mean, I would say go ahead and dream of what kinds of things you want to be able to pull out and what kind of reports you want to be able to see. If you want to shoot those to Lisa, as we get this API and this transfer going and making sure that it's pretty solid and clean, we'll work on reporting after that so we can make sure to try to really prioritize what's most helpful for you. So if you want to get with Lisa on things that you think are incredibly important for you to have, we'll make sure and put those in the backlog of things we want to start with development. Rachel, do you have any follow-up?
Can you hear me? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
So I apologize. I was leaving a provider meeting. You might have touched base on this at the very first, but
okay.
Will this process also allow us to kind of tell the story of a child? Like if we, like I see right here that you've got the individualized support, but if once the child like has a birth date screen or something, if we're doing more, or will we still be entering that information into Brooks?
So you can still put things into Brooks if you want, but what we're hoping to build, and I'm not sure if you were able to see this, this is kind of next up on the queue for what we want
Oh, yes.
developed. So our hope is that this will be able to follow the child around, and then at the end of each of these, you'd be able, in ESS, and then each of these would have a way to click on it and see case notes. So we're trying to create this as a way to filter and see the whole history of the child. We immediately will have the ability to access any archived screening data, so you'll be able to see all the screens that have come in for the child, no matter if they move coalitions or not. That will stay with them, but this will be next up on the queue for development, and I've already run this by the EFS team, but obviously we have lots of other priorities that are hitting, so this is the follow-up next. So I would say it's a half yes, half no answer. So in the meantime, you'll probably still use a lot of that backup data that's available through Enterprise or through whatever system you use locally, eventually to have this be where we want to head. And obviously, this is such a rough draft. I need to go in here and make some different things happen, and I've got tons of feedback and business notes and questions to go through. But this will be another work group that hopefully will be coming up quickly, so we can start getting this into development, so you don't have to do that in another system.
That's great.
Okay.
Any more questions, Rachel?
Nope, I'm good for right now. Thanks.
Awesome.
Great. Jamie, Richard.
Okay. Screening link is forwarded to the provider of the coalition queue. How will this be determined who gets the link? Janie, when you fill out the contract and it has that place where you say who the responsible party is, it will follow that as the trigger to whose queue it goes into. Janie, did you have any follow-up to that?
You're muted, Janie. Maybe she has no mic.
That's okay. If you need to interrupt me, let me know. All right, Danielle, if a parent chooses to complete the initial screening, are they also required to complete the annual screening? So no, if the parent completes the initial screening, then the screening is done to meet the requirement of the rule. The rule says that we have to coordinate with parents or providers to get this done, so this meets that requirement of coordinating with parents, because the system will do that for you. Again, in an effort to try to make this process smooth and save you guys from tons of findings, we were trying to make it pretty mechanized, so there would not be a follow-up. Now, one of the things that we've been working through is what we do if a parent defers and it's a subsequent screening, because then, and the provider is the party that it would go to, because that may put a lot of time in between screenings. So we're trying to think that through right now on if that would just sit in the provider's queue until the birthday month, or if we would figure out another way to expedite that, or if we can open the rule and change it before we have a lot of subsequent screenings is our hope. But right now, it will go to the provider's queue and follow the operations of the rule. So, but right now, it will, it does cover, if the parent does it, it does meet the screening requirement of the rule.
Danielle, you've been unmuted.
Did you have any follow-up?
Just a no.
Okay. All right, Annabelle. For coalitions that subcontract the individualized follow-up, will there be an access page for contractors to enter the data, or should coalitions plan to enter the data themselves? So Annabelle, on that side, that's a really good question, and I feel like we should probably make that available in EFS Mod. I need to just check security-wise what will be available, or maybe we can have a conversation about if you would rather them use Enterprise for that. So let's do some follow-up and see what would be best, but I know we'll be able to make a way for that to happen. So we just need to find out what works best for you. So I'll have Lisette follow up, or not have Lisette, I'll ask Lisette if she will follow up with you, and we can get some more information about what would be best for Miami.
Annabelle, you've been unmuted. I don't know if you have.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for that response. I have like a ton of other questions. Some you've already answered. But I just wanted to clarify, you said that if parent declines the screening doesn't mean that you can't screen the child, but I wanted to clarify that we cannot screen the child until we do get consent from them. So like initial consent initial decline isn't a forever decline, but it does require that we follow up and get consent, right?
Yeah, so if they gave you consent in the terms and conditions and just declined doing the screening, you can use that consent in the terms and conditions as consent to do the screening. But if they decline both, then yes, you would need them to go in and accept, or get consent to do the screening.
So the system is going to notify us if there's a decline in the form but consent in the rights and responsibilities.
We are going to let you know if they decline it in the system. We actually hadn't thought about sending you a notification if it's a mismatch, but we'll follow up and see if there's a way to do that so you don't have to manually go back and check. So let us take a look into that and see if it's possible to do a filter to watch for both of those to see if there is a mismatch, and we can notify you. So let's just stay tuned on that one, and I'll see what I can find out. That's a really good question.
Okay. And then I echoed what someone else mentioned about the larger coalitions really benefiting from a notification, just because enrollments come in every day, screenings may be declined or accepted every day, and I really don't know how we would manage the influx if someone is going in there every day to check to see what happened, rather than when there's a notification or when we're alerted that a follow-up is needed.
So you would prefer, instead of checking it every day, to get a notification anytime something's needed?
Yeah, I think what we would probably implement would be kind of like regular checkpoints, like, you know, twice a week or every Monday, but then also request notifications in case something comes in in the middle of the week before a checkpoint.
And what we may be able to do, and I can't guarantee this, I need to run this by the developer, but I wonder if there's a way that you can set notification preferences. So for those of you who don't want it coming constantly as soon as something changes, you can turn it off. But for those of you who do, you can turn it on, and maybe you can gauge it back and forth. So I don't know if that's an option, but we can for sure do notifications. But I wonder, I'll try to see if there's a way to turn it on and off based off of what you find to be most helpful.
Okay. And then I had a question regarding the notes and the data entry. I guess I'm confused. I'm not sure if it's that each provider will have a profile in which they'll enter. Let's say the coalition assigns the screening to the provider. Does the provider then have a profile, or required to have a profile in in Brooks or in the enterprise system to enter the data themselves? Or is this something that so that's the first question. And the second question is, will child and provider information transfer over to EFS Mod via the API, or is this something that coalitions will have to enter manually?
So the second question is, it will happen automatically through the API. So there's no manual entry. The data will immediately transfer, and we're trying to make it look as similar to the output that you would see in Brooks. So they're sending us their mock-up and how they do that so that we can match it. So that will be automatic. So on the provider question, when the queue goes to them, they will immediately be taken to the screening tool. And that screening tool will, or when they go into it, they will complete the screening in Family Access. Now, what's going to happen is it will automatically sit in one program. And if you want to assign it to a provider to do follow-up or anything that you want them to do is, you know, the next steps, you can do that inside of the enterprise system. You would just pull them from the main program into their own individual program. But as far as notes, that's one of the questions that I want to do as a part two is, what kind of notes in EFS do you want to keep until that technical assistance page is developed? So we make sure that we can have a trail until we have the fancy page. So that the notes in EFS and the process for EFS we're going to do as a part two. But there will be the option to do all of the same things that have always been done in Enterprise and in the Family Access. So you can still move people around and get them to put data and reports in as much as you want. But the overall answer is, providers will enter the data directly from EFS. It will take them straight to Enterprise, to the Family Access. They'll enter the data. All the demographics will go with them, and then the data will sit there, but also transfer to EFS.
So when providers are given this link to go enter the data into Brooks, they're logging into their own Brooks profile?
No, it will take them automatically to just the screener it just will take them into your Family Access file, into that program, so that they'll directly enter the screening. And then if you want it to move into another program for them to have, you know, be able to put notes and stuff in, you can move that from the main program into their program. So they'll, if you want to, you don't, however you want to set up Family Access that makes the most sense for you. Some coalitions don't, they have it all in one. Some have it where every provider has their own individual program. If you want it that way, you can move that screening into their program so you can put notes in. But if not, all of that data is coming back to EFS anyways. And so I guess what we could try to think about, and that's the part two I want to talk about, is would you rather the provider put their notes in EFS instead of in Enterprise?
Okay, so when the provider's putting their notes in Enterprise from that link, does that mean that the certain demographic information about that child has already been pre-populated so that that can go back into EFS and connect to the right child?
When they click the link, it's going to create a webhook. It'll trigger a webhook that Enterprise will actually come over and grab all of the demographic information, a unique identifier for the child, and anything that you would typically have manually entered. It will be a pre-population of those fields.
Webhook. I like that.
Okay.
Any more questions, Annabelle?
So I'm sorry, this is very new to me because we don't use Enterprise or Family Access at this point. So a lot of the stuff that you're showing is new, is completely new. So
of course,
when the provider enters the screening data in this link, it goes back and you said it sits in a queue. Then the coalition is responsible for moving it from that queue into other options and tracking follow-up that way. So then we would be responsible for assigning the child to either internal staff to do individualized follow-up or to whoever we've contracted the services to?
So and we'll probably need to chat through your specific process, because I know, and I believe probably you use BlueJeans too that you track with. So it may be easier for you, instead of doing all the assigning, to be able to do an export from that main program into BlueJeans so that you can do your work like you always have if you'd like to. If you want to, maybe what we can do is have some time that you and Lisette can sit together and look through Enterprise, and we can try to make sure that it's a little bit more simple for you. The hope is that the assigning of who's doing what for the child will, as far as coalition staff, will happen in EFS mod, because we'll have a trigger of when there's a concern, and so that will help us create that queue that lets us know something needs to be done, and then we'll have the option to work on assigning who gets what and what the next follow-up steps are. But maybe what we can do is have some follow-up with Lisette, and we can make sure that the process doesn't prevent you from doing what works in Miami, and maybe it's a data export into your current system from Family Access, or we can work through EFS and Family Access to make sure you have the same functionality.
Okay.
Any other follow-up?
No, not right now.
Okay, as you think of things, and Annabelle, I know that your system is set up a tiny bit different, so let's make sure to follow up, because I want to make sure it doesn't cause a ruckus and your flow seems as like it's still going the way that you want it to go, but still being able to attach. Our main goal in this process is to get the data from Enterprise back to the family portal, so we're meeting statutory requirements, but also do this in a way that covers your ground for the screening rule and making sure it's easier for you. So we may just need to do some tweaking. So definitely, Lisette will reach out to you very quickly, and we'll make sure we've got a good inventory of what you need.
Thank you, Annabelle.
All right, thank you.
All right, Deb said, will a child profile be created in Enterprise automatically upon enrollment in MOD? And the answer to that, Deb, is yes. It will automatically fill out everything that needs to happen in Enterprise. As soon as we click that link, the API will create that data transfer to pre-populate that.
And that was Deb Ferrara. And if you want to speak, you need to enter your PIN. So raise your hand whenever you're ready, and I'll unmute you.
Megan's question, will the provider receive an email when it goes to their queue in EFS mod? And the answer to that is yes. We have already okayed that with EFS mod.
And Megan had her hand up. I just cannot find her in my list. I wonder if she's still there. Okay.
Gayla has a great question. Will the coalition no longer be required to notice providers when the ASQs are due? And so our hope, and I just need to verify this with monitoring, but I believe that this will count as notification to the providers because the system will notify them and it will go in their queue. So any other follow-up seems a bit redundant, so I just have to get the blessing from monitoring on that. But I feel like the system's doing this for you, and that was the intent. So that would be their notification because it's an automated notification.
So Megan, I have unmuted you if you want to speak.
Yes, a couple questions. Hi, guys.
Hi.
So first, as far as what you were just talking about with the notification to providers, and assuming that's good enough for monitoring to meet the rule requirement, if that's the case, I guess will there be a way for us to pull to verify that notification went to them? Because I know, sometimes some notifications have been backlogged, providers haven't received notifications and they're sent out later. So I would, just for a compliance standpoint, would like to be able to verify that notification was sent.
Okay. Do you want to be able to audit that from the backside to make sure that it went out?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
it also will go in their queue as well, just so they know. So hopefully we'll get to a place where providers are used to receiving those notifications. I know we have some that are less tech savvy, so it will go in their queue and be prioritized by the date, but then we'll send an email. So I'll check too to see if there's a way. I know with some of our emails, the way that they work now, we can tell if they've been opened or not. So I'm not sure if that's possible, but I'll follow up to see if that's another bit of quality assurance we can add to the process. I can't guarantee it, but we'll look into that.
Yeah. And then my next question was, we don't currently use Brooks either. And so I was just wondering, will you guys be offering training for, I'm more concerned about training for providers, but also training for ELC staff when it gets closer to deployment so we can kind of prepare them for what's coming. Because, we have a hard time getting our providers to use the current system, even though it's been around for a while. And so I'm a little worried that we're going to have a lot of non-compliance when this launches.
Okay, yeah, for sure. That's a great point. So yeah, we can make sure to offer that training. And again, I know it's hard when, the state comes in and says we have to do it this way. And our main goal, because we have that statutory requirement that it all has to come in, this really was the only way to get around it, is everybody screening in the same system. But we will make sure, like I said, there will be the ability to pull the data out of that main program from ASQ. So if you need to do a data export, you can move it into any current systems you use, if that helps, so that you can keep the same process, but then that still gives us the ability to get the data. But yeah, we'll absolutely do. And just so you know, if you do an export from EFS to a system that you use and you do an export from Brooks, they will have the same unique identifier. So matching the kids will not be difficult because they will all have the same EFS unique identifier.
Okay, awesome. And then, sorry, last question is, I think it might be helpful for Hillsborough if we can maybe have a call offline with you guys too, just to kind of figure out. And our school district is our subrecipient for all the screenings, and they're probably on the line too. But between, me that kind of looks at the compliance side, and then the people that actually follow up on the screenings, and then also our data manager, just to kind of make sure that we know what we're getting into.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just for the ones we've talked to, but anybody who wants to troubleshoot how this looks for your local process, we will absolutely make time to do that. I know sometimes it's hard to create that process when you don't know all the ins and outs and what's available. So if anybody wants to do that, just email Lisa and we'll make sure to spend what time we need to make sure that you have a good idea of how this looks at your area, in your area.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's it.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan.
And Kayla, you are unmuted if you want to follow up.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. All right, Danielle, once a parent completes a screening with all of the summaries, will all the summaries and screenings be shared with the providers automatically, or will the coalition have to provide it? So one of the things that I'm checking on right now is the security protocols. I believe we're okay, but what I would like to be able to do is have the screening data not just populate to the parent portal, but also populate to the provider portal so that they can see it as well. The terms and conditions actually do seem like that's allowable based off of how they sign off. But what we're hoping to do is share that data back and forth. Now, if you want the provider to have access to that screening data in the family access system, you can move that screening into that provider's program for them to see and do whatever they would need to do in the system with it. But we are also trying to figure out a way to display that to them in EFS Mod. So what we're also doing, again, the parents will be able to have it. So that will take care of having to share the results with parents because we'll make sure that they have it. And then again, to Megan's point earlier, we may want to also do a notification when the parent opens it and accesses it. So if you see that a family has not seen the screening data, that way you follow up. So we'll try to do some quality assurance on that side too to make sure we've have you covered in that process. Danielle, did you have any follow-up to that?
You've been unmuted.
Okay.
I think she said no mic.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry.
I thought the rule engaging parent as a first choice before deferment got pulled. So Dawn, what we were trying to really change in the rule was the timeline, and then we did want to create this process in rule. The current rule didn't, it was allowable under the current rule. We were just making it really clear and trying to make sure that the referral process worked and the follow-up process worked. So the rule that got pulled had follow-up processes and making sure that you analyze concerns, and then it also had changes in the due dates of when things were due. That was the main intention of the rule, but this process was allowable under the current rule because the current rule says that we have to coordinate with parents and providers, or providers. So this would just fall under the conversation of, or under the compartment of coordinating with parents.
You are unmuted, Dawn, if you have any follow-up.
Okay. Nancy had a follow-up. If the parent changes their mind in the future, can decline screening change? And yes, we can go in and reset that in EFS. And did we make a note just so we can make sure to keep that on our list? Thank you. Can you explain the difference between decline and the one that's in terms and conditions and elsewhere? So the first terms and conditions that the parent goes through, it's the one that they sign off on saying, yes, you can do this, yes, you can do that, yes, you can do this, or no. We're adding two of them in there where one is, can your child assessment data be transferred back and forth, because this is not only happening for screening, but also happening for child assessment. So any of you interested in trying to hear how that process is going, reach out to Lisa. We can fill you in. But that's kind of under procurement right now, and we're working through that side. But we're going to add that in as a term and condition, and then another term and condition, or another condition that will come in is, can your child be screened, and can we share that data? So that's the Aaron version of it. It's a lot more formal. And so that first part of enrollment will have them choosing that. But then on the page, they have the ability to ask for help for the screening or decline the screening. And, as we talk about this too, I wonder if it would be a better idea that if they already accepted screening being done, that we would only offer the choice of doing the screening or asking for help. Because if they already said it was okay, it may make more sense to just remove that decline option. So as you guys are thinking this through, I think that may be a good option. So let me do that, so then that way it's not confusing that we would have a mismatch between the two. And then that way the option is pass it along or do it yourself. So let me take a look. That may clear that up. So let's pause on that and do a part two, and we'll make sure that we clean that up a bit. All right, if a child's, okay, we already answered that one.
Seisha Sanchez?
Okay, yeah, and then that's what I just answered. And then we already answered Beth. And will the roster be listed by SR provider or by, she said never mind, she understands, okay. Notify, okay, Annabelle, got that one. We'll need reports, okay. Our parents asking about screening. Okay, yes, Allison, that's a really good question. Will we do the same process at redetermination? And the answer is yes. So that's the part where we're hoping to have the rule changed in time so everybody does screening at the same time. Because, if not, it would defer to the provider, and then they would have until the birth month of the child, and we really don't want that much time in between screenings. So we're going to offer this every time they go in for enrollment or redetermination. And it'd be the secondary enrollments, basically. Allison, did you have any follow-up to that? Allison, you've been unmuted.
No, I'm good. You answered my question.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, please just same. Okay, I think I answered that one. Okay, Nancy, we will follow up with you for sure to see how, we'll follow up to see how we can make it work. Okay? We'll just keep track of referrals. So Tina, that's our part 2 we want to do with you on how we will track the reactions to the screening. So that's part of what we need to get through this part first, and then we'll be able to do, it will have to all be done by July 1, so we're going to have some screens to be able to do this. So so we will do a part 2 very quickly to make sure we have a place to track referrals and individualized support. Okay, okay, so no, rather have reports versus emails, okay. Okay, I think I've answered that one. Okay, again, I know I said this and you probably answered this or typed this before I answered it, but yes, when they click the screening, the webhook will grab all the demographics and it will pre-populate all of the demographics that are needed for screening, so the parent won't have to retype those. So that should save a lot of time on the screening. All right. Okay, so duplicates. So if you do multiple screenings, we're working with Brooks to be able to make sure that they queue those or have a way to merge those files so that all the screenings link to that same unique identifier. In our system, they will archive every screening that comes in will be able to be archived so that you can see historical screening data for the child. So because that unique identifier is what's following them around in all the systems, we'll be able to see anything that comes in and out of Enterprise will be attached to that identifier in EFS Mod. And the cool side of this for all of my data geeks on the phone, who I am one of them, that same unique identifier will also be going to the assessment tools that will come back. So you'll be able to run some really cool reports to be able to look at assessment data versus screening data and really look at long-term data on the children. So having that unique identifier is pretty powerful, and we're really excited about that. Okay. And also that ID does not change even if they move coalition. So the ID is permanent. It is not one that will modify as they move around the state. Okay. All right. The process for sharing the screening scores with families. So it will automatically go to the families as soon as it's done. What we're also going to do is get a destination number, so your warm line number or a number to your main CCR&R line or someone that can follow up with information if parents have questions, and those numbers will be filtered by the coalition. So when the family goes into the portal to see their screening data, a number will be there for accessing information and follow-ups. If they want to have more information or talk to someone face-to-face, they will have a number there that's changed depending on the coalition that you tell us is the best number, and that will be available to parents. Additionally, with the preschool development funds, we're going to have vignettes on that page that will show best practices for follow-up on screening and really great information that parents can watch, little 60-second clips for them to just understand screening results and also be able to know what to do as a reaction to them. So that will be there as well. Okay, well, the link to providers tell them the interval and due date when it notifies them. Some providers do not do them immediately and prefer to keep paper copies instead of entering it all electronically. So it shall be, if there are things that you want us to put in the provider queue, we can add that to that roster mockup. It will prioritize it by due date. It will prioritize it based off of you know, due date really is the main one that would prioritize it, and it will notify them when they get there. But if there are other things you want them to know, just shoot Lisa an email and we'll make sure to add that to the mockup. We will need to have a copy of email notifications. Okay, that was Megan's as well, so we'll make sure we have that. We open the rule to strike the requirement to obtain an OEL SR24 when the parent. Deb, that's great feedback, and that is the hope when we open the rule. And the issue with the rule, just so you know, we can't change the screening rule until we open the contract, and that's why it got pulled. So as soon as we are able to open the contract, which we know we'll have to do that based off of how session goes, we typically have to open it. So as we open that, we'll be able to modify them so they match. So the screening rule is just built in such a way that it can't open by itself without the contract, without causing crazy. And we kind of noticed that through this rule process. So we will make sure that we have everything updated in the contract and at the same time open the rules so it makes sense. That was a great question. If the parents have access to the screening results after they complete the ASQ, are we required to send the results? Shelby, that's a great question, and I am saying that that would count because it does notify them. Again, I have to get that blessed by the monitoring team, but the one thing I want to make sure that we have something available is to make sure that families have actually gone to those results. We are going to have an email notification to the families as soon as the results are posted, but sometimes they change emails and things shift and change, and so what we will do is try to figure out a way to see if a parent has actually accessed that data so that we can say, yes, they received it, or no, they haven't. So stay tuned on that. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's a great idea, Nancy. If the provider or parent has reviewed the results, that needs to be able to be in a report. That's a great comment, Nancy. Thank you. We'll make sure and get that going too. Have you considered a way via MOD to obtain parental consent for ELC staff to interact with the child? That's a good question, Deb. Let's follow up on that to make sure we get the whole idea behind that, and then we'll try to see what we can do. Okay, Annabelle's ready to talk. For reading, you may want time parameters such as BG1. Oh, okay, that's great too, Gayla. So making sure we expedite those who may come in on a referral instead, because the referral timeline is shorter unless they get that purpose for care. So we'll make sure and add that in as something that could prioritize it because the timeline can get shorter. That's great, Gayla. Thank you. Will these unique identifiers apply to children that are already in enterprise, or will we merge them once they roll out? Shelby, that's a great question. It is up to you. We're not requiring you to merge them. If you want to merge them for history, you can. Brooks has said that you can do that, but we aren't going to ask you to do that unless you want to. All of the data, we're starting fresh. This new system flowing in, we'll have all the data in EFS, but if for history you want to be able to merge them, you have that capability, but we aren't going to ask you to do that. So that would really be to your discretion. Okay. Any plans to work with the school districts to merge SR identifiers with K-12? Oh, Nancy, I love that question. Eventually, we are almost there, not quite, but we are almost at the point where I know VPK is already receiving them. But SR, we were told by the end of the calendar year, I believe, but don't hold me to that, that the EFS ID will be the FLE ID. So again, I know I said earlier that the EFS ID is permanent and doesn't change across coalitions. But what we would do is if they get ready for that FLE ID and we have that process underway, we would merge the files. But eventually we do want to get to the point where from birth they are getting that FLE ID. And we may just start fresh and just start with our infants coming in or brand new enrollments and maybe leave EFS numbers for the rest of them. I'm not sure how that process will work, but I am told that within the very near future, we will have FLE IDs as our unique identifier. I just don't have a finalized date. So yes, Nancy, that is on its way, hopefully in the near future. This is a wish for the future. Think about working with DCF to get results of any comprehensive assessments or referrals from children. Oh, what a great idea, Deb. Okay, that's actually a really great idea. Thank you. So her thought was getting anything that might have come through DCF system for the child. That's a really good idea, Deb. Will a parent have the option to print the results or be able to take a copy of the screening? Yes, Frankie, they will have that option to print the screening results and take them with them or to the provider. Again, we're trying to be able to move that data into the provider. I have a couple hesitations about it, just trying to make sure we think through security. But we do eventually want to get, it may be that once a provider receives the first payment or we absolutely have guaranteed that they're enrolled there, that we would share that data. But I know sometimes in that initial enrollment, things can get a little transitional. So we are hoping that that will be available to providers, so parents won't have to print it out and take it, but they can print it out and take it to doctors or to whoever else. It will be an option. Okay, optional notifications. Do you expect this functional on yes, so this has to be functional July 1 per statute. So we are moving as fast as we can right now. A lot of the development has already, in a preliminary way, taken place. We've already worked with Brooks Database or with their developers to make sure that this is possible, and we've been troubleshooting everything. So we have gotten the green light that it is good to go as far as the process and being able to get it done, and have started preliminary development, but we wanted to run it by you first to make sure that we weren't missing something along the way. But yes, it has to be functional by July 1 per statute. Would there be any way to track when a parent chooses to decline moving forward with the referral process? That's a good idea. Rachel, let's follow up because I want to hear more about that question. And I know it's 3. Do we end at 3? Okay, so it's 3 o'clock. Wow, that went by very quickly, and I have a whole page of questions. So maybe what we can do is do a follow-up. I want to make sure you get to your next meeting. So thank you so much for all the feedback. If you feel super passionate about this and want to keep continuing conversations, reach out to Lisette. We'll do another meeting and make sure you have tons of time to give feedback and make sure all your questions are answered. But thank you so much for all of this and all of your help. And hopefully this will make life a lot easier for you. And if not, call us so we can figure out how to make it easy. But thank you for what you do, and we will be in touch very soon. Thank you. Have a great day.